Welcome to this overview of climate-friendly areas, which focuses on one part of how Oregon's climate-friendly and equitable communities rules apply to the city of Springfield. Today's presentation will focus on what climate-friendly areas are, how they are being selected, and what Springfield will need to do to comply with new state regulations. The presentation covers the following topics: an introduction to climate-friendly areas rules, key features and goals associated with climate-friendly areas, regulatory requirements, Springfield's timeline for implementing those requirements, review of potential CFA locations in Springfield, summary of prior and upcoming community engagement, and contact information for additional questions. Climate-friendly areas, or CFAs for short, are walkable mixed-use districts with homes, jobs, and stores all close to one another. They are climate-friendly because they encourage people to take shorter trips and drive less, which leads to lower greenhouse gas emissions. They also aim to increase equity by creating opportunities for housing in areas with good access to jobs and amenities, while enacting policies to keep existing residents in their homes. So if you imagine areas in Springfield where you can live, work, and shop without needing a car, and where you can feel safe and enjoy getting to where you want to go, and where everyone else has the opportunity to thrive, that is the vision for CFAs. Climate-friendly areas are just one piece of a larger set of new state regulations called Climate-Friendly and Equitable Communities Rules, or CFEC for short. Oregon's Climate-Friendly and Equitable Communities Rules require some cities, including Springfield, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by encouraging compact mixed-use development and alternatives to driving alone. While policy and development requirements come directly from state law, Springfield has a choice in selecting one or more climate-friendly areas, shaping their boundaries, and forming strategies to meet the requirements. Once we select CFAs, changes to regulations like zoning and how we invest our public dollars in infrastructure will help transform these areas over time. These changes will not happen overnight, but will include key features such as safer streets, more complete sidewalks, paths for walking, biking, rolling, and public transit. In addition, more diverse and compact housing choices will allow more current and future residents to take advantage of all the great things that CFAs offer. CFAs will also feature more opportunities for mixed-use development, including shops, housing, and services. Public dollars for parks, green spaces, and transportation options will also be prioritized within CFAs. Investments and policy changes will be needed to transform some areas of Springfield into CFAs. These investments and policy changes could include new zoning rules that encourage a mix of homes and businesses close to jobs and daily destinations, safety and transit improvements that make streets more comfortable for all users, investments in transportation infrastructure that support biking, walking, rolling, and taking the bus, and investments in public amenities like parks and civic spaces. CFAs are intended to help achieve the state's climate goals by addressing both transportation and land use. Specific requirements include at least one primary CFA that's at least 25 acres in size. CFAs must accommodate at least 30% of Springfield's 20-year housing need, which is 9,923 housing units. Primary CFAs must allow for at least 25 dwelling units per acre with no maximum densities. They must allow for but do not require buildings to be at least 85 feet tall, which is typically about 7 stories. They must allow for a mix of uses, much like Springfield's existing mixed-use land use districts. And they must be accessible via existing or planned high-quality bicycle and pedestrian networks and with 1/2 mile of existing or planned high-frequency transit corridors. Strategies must be implemented to help people avoid having to move elsewhere due to rising costs from redevelopment. Another thing that Springfield has to consider is the choice to designate primary and/or secondary CFAs. Springfield must designate at least one primary CFA that's at least 25 acres in size. Primary CFAs allow, but do not require, taller buildings and require minimum densities to support more high-density housing options. Springfield has the option to choose to designate one or more secondary CFAs. Secondary CFAs allow but do not require somewhat lower heights. They also require lower minimum densities than primary CFAs. Springfield can choose different combinations of primary and secondary CFAs to best meet housing and development goals. For example, Springfield could consider designating CFAs that can accommodate more housing capacity than the minimum requirement in order to support future housing planning efforts. Springfield could also consider the potential benefits of having closely connected CFAs, such as Glenwood and Downtown, which are currently served by high-frequency transit and provide a regional connection to the University of Oregon and downtown Eugene. Although CFAs are part of a new set of state rules, Springfield has already started this kind of work. This includes improvements such as investing in transportation infrastructure, like multi-use paths and separated bikeways. It also includes zoning for compact and mixed-use development, like new regulations in several potential CFA areas already largely complying with state requirements. So what does Springfield need to do to comply with the state's rules for CFAs? First, Springfield needs to study potential CFA locations and potential displacement impacts that may result from rising costs from future development. This has already been done in 2023. We are currently working to identify and select preferred CFA locations, needed zoning changes, transportation improvements, and anti-displacement strategies to help people stay where they are. Then, elected officials will adopt changes to local regulations and formalize our CFA boundaries. In 2023, we identified 4 potential CFA locations. We made sure that the locations and size requirements for CFAs complied with state rules. This includes proximity to existing or planned high-density mixed-use areas, access to parks, and access to high-quality transportation options. We then analyzed existing zoning regulations to see what would need to change. We measured the potential housing capacity within CFAs to ensure they had enough housing capacity for at least 30% of the city's 20-year housing needs. Then in early 2024, some CFAs were further refined to remove certain areas with special considerations that don't currently align with CFA requirements, like the Washburn Historic District. Each potential CFA location was analyzed across 5 categories. Some potential CFAs, like Downtown, are already very close to compliance with state rules. Others will need more policy changes and investments to meet state requirements for CFAs. The Downtown CFA is the most closely aligned with CFA requirements. Its zoning generally allows densities and uses required by CFEC rules. It has the capacity to accommodate at least 30% of the city's 20-year housing need. It has the most mixed-use areas and access to parks or similar amenities, and it has the most existing options for biking, walking, and high-frequency transit. The Glenwood Riverfront potential CFA is close to compliance in some categories and further away in others. Its zoning is largely compliant, but it would not be able to satisfy the requirement for housing capacity by itself. It is located close to parks and other open space and is served by high-frequency transit. It has future plans for access and safety improvements for biking and walking options. The Mohawk area presents some opportunities for becoming a CFA, but also presents challenges. While its zoning regulations are largely in compliance, it lacks access to parks and similar amenities. It has a large variety of services close to housing, but its streets present challenges for walking and biking. While it does not have access to high-frequency transit today, there are plans to expand service to this area in the future. Like Mohawk, the Gateway Riverbend potential CFA presents some opportunities and some challenges. Its zoning is largely compliant with CFA requirements, but it is not in close proximity to existing mixed-use areas. While it is close to the Mackenzie River, it lacks formal park access. While it is served by high-frequency transit, it lacks some walking and biking infrastructure. As part of identifying and designating CFAs, Springfield must consider that these changes may put some communities, especially those who have been harmed by past planning, climate, and transportation decisions, at risk of displacement, as new development takes place in these areas over time. Displacement occurs when current residents are priced out of their current homes, often through redevelopment, higher housing costs, and rising property values. In 2023, the CFA study identified these underserved communities across Springfield. However, there is a lack of data for some populations. It is important to also gather qualitative information during community engagement efforts. That's why in 2023, interviews with community leaders provided suggestions on how to engage diverse community groups in transportation and housing planning projects. Feedback from these interviews is foundational to our engagement efforts moving forward. As part of next steps, the city will conduct further analysis to better understand how demographic or housing market factors contribute to displacement risk and identify strategies to mitigate or avoid potential displacement. Over the coming months, city staff will be gathering community feedback and asking our elected and appointed officials to make some important decisions. This spring, we are gathering feedback on potential CFA locations. Later in the summer, the City Council and Planning Commission will help us narrow down the potential CFA options, and we will be identifying displacement mitigation strategies for community feedback. In the fall and winter, we will engage the community again to get feedback on draft plan code concepts and draft final CFA locations. In 2025, we plan to finalize CFAs and related policies and hold public hearings before Council adopts code changes, plan amendments, and CFA boundaries. Now we want to hear from you. Please use the link below or the QR code on the right to access a short survey about CFAs. There are many ways you can continue to stay informed. You can visit the project webpage by clicking this link. You can also reach out to the City of Springfield's project manager, Chelsea Hartman. For more information, read the 2-page CFA study summary on the project webpage, plus a lot more.